The classroom was a perfect circle. Its walls were a smooth pale silver, and they seemed to soak up the light from the soft blue glow of the ceiling. In the center of the room stood Magistrate Quanak. He was not human. He was tall, with a hard, shiny brown body that looked like polished wood or stone. His legs were long and jointed like those of a giant insect, and they clicked softly when he moved. He had 4 arms, and he used them all to gesture as he spoke. His voice was deep and calm, like stones rolling at the bottom of a deep river. This was the class for interspecies diplomacy and conflict resolution. It was one of the most important classes at the Galactic Accord University. The students in the room came from many different worlds. Some were small and furry with large dark eyes. Others had shimmering scales or smooth rubbery skin. They were the best and brightest from their planets. Among them were 3 humans. They were the first humans to ever study at the university. Everyone watched them closely. Park Ji-hwan sat near the front. He sat up very straight, his shoulders back. He liked to be noticed. He had worked very hard to get here, and he wanted to make sure everyone knew that humanity belonged. He believed the best way to do that was to show how quickly humans could learn and follow the galaxy's rules. Lee Jun sat a few seats away from Ji-hwan. He was quieter. His eyes moved around the room, watching the other students, watching the magistrate, watching everything. He was not as loud as Ji-hwan, but he was just as smart. He believed that understanding was more important than being noticed. And in the very back of the room, sitting alone, was Choi Soo-min. She was the hardest to notice. She was neither tall nor short. She did not make loud noises or big movements. During class, she was perfectly still. Her hands were folded on the desk. Her dark eyes were calm and watchful. She listened to every word, but she never, ever spoke. Magistrate Quanak clicked his way to the front of the room. Today, his deep voice echoed, we begin with the most important lesson you will learn at this university. It is the foundation of our galactic community. It is the principle that separates the civilized from the primitive. We call it the doctrine of civilized power. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed images of vast starships, beautiful cities under glass domes, and complex trade routes connecting different stars. True power, Quanak continued, is not found in the strength of a single body. The body is weak. It is fragile. It can be broken by a fall, by a change in the air, by a tiny invisible organism. Relying on the body is the way of beasts. The hologram shifted to show a large, muscular, furry creature roaring. Then it showed a picture of a sleek, silent warship. The warship fired a single beam of light and the creature was gone. True civilized power, Quanak said, comes from the mind. It is the power to build, to create technology, to command a fleet, to control an economy. This is the power that builds peace. This is the power that has allowed so many different species to live together. Lee Jun listened carefully. It made sense. On Earth, humans had also built great machines and cities. But he also knew that human history was filled with wars, with soldiers and weapons. He wondered how the galaxy saw that part of their past. Park Ji-hwan nodded enthusiastically. He raised his hand. Magistrate, this is exactly why humanity has worked so hard to reach the stars. We have left our more violent instincts behind. We embrace this doctrine completely. Quanak gave a slow, approving nod. A commendable attitude, Student Park. It is the correct path. Ji-hwan smiled, looking pleased with himself. He glanced back, his eyes sweeping over the other students, and for a moment, they rested on Soo-min in the back. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Annoyance, maybe. She was not helping the human image. She was too quiet, too different, Quanak went on. Because of this doctrine, we have one supreme rule here. The worst thing a student can do is to suggest using physical force to solve a problem. It shows a failure to understand everything we stand for. To actually use violence is unthinkable. It would mean immediate expulsion from this university. You would be sent home in disgrace. Your world would be shamed. The room was silent. The rule was very clear. The lesson moved on to a history of the Galactic Accord. Quanak spoke of great treaties and trade agreements. He spoke of wars that were won not with battles but with blockades and economic pressure. Ji-hwan continued to participate, answering questions and agreeing with the magistrate. He was painting a picture of humanity as a wise, civilized species, ready to join the galactic community. Lee Jun noticed that Ji-hwan kept looking back at Soo-min. Lee Jun looked at her too. She hadn't moved. Her face showed no reaction to the lesson. It was as if she was hearing a story about the weather. It was strange. Weren't they all proud to be here? Weren't they all excited? Why did she seem so detached? The class ended with a warning. Tomorrow, Quanak said, his voice serious, we will begin practical simulations. You will be tested on your ability to use words, logic, and diplomacy to resolve a conflict. Remember the rule. Your future here depends on it. The students began to gather their things. The quiet hum of conversation started as they floated or walked toward the door. Li Jun walked over to Ji-hwan. You were very active today, he said. Someone has to represent us properly, Ji-hwan said, his voice low. He nodded his head slightly toward the back of the room. Sumin was standing up, her movement smooth and unhurried. Look at her. She says nothing. She does nothing. The others will think all humans are like that. Quiet, strange, primitive. Maybe she's just listening, Li Jun suggested. Listening isn't enough, Ji-hwan snapped. We have to show them we are better than our reputation. What reputation? Li Jun asked. Ji-hwan lowered his voice even more. You know what they call Earth, don't you? When they think we can't hear? Li Jun nodded slowly. He had heard the whispers. A word, spoken with a mix of fear and disrespect. Deathworld. It was the galactic term for a planet that was unusually dangerous. High gravity. Extreme weather. Predatory wildlife. A world where survival was a constant battle. Earth was classified as a death world, one of the most dangerous ever recorded. To the other students, humans were not just a new species. They were monsters who had crawled out of a nightmare world. They are afraid of us, Ji-hwan said, and fear is a weakness. We need to show them we have tamed our world, and in doing so, we have tamed ourselves. We are civilized now. As they talked, they moved out into the wide, brightly lit corridor. Many of the other students were there, chatting in their various groups. Sumin walked out behind them. She didn't join any group. She simply started walking down the corridor, heading towards the residential sector. Ji-hwan watched her go, his frustration growing. Her silence felt like an accusation. It felt like she was judging him for trying so hard. He quickened his pace and caught up to her. Sumin, he said, his voice louder now, drawing attention. She stopped and turned to look at him. Her expression was neutral, calm. You didn't say a single word in there, Ji-hwan said. Don't you think you have a responsibility? We are here for all of humanity. Sumin looked at him for a moment before answering. Listening is also a responsibility, she said. Her voice was soft but clear. It's not enough, Ji-hwan insisted. Some of the other students had stopped to watch. A six-legged being with large eyes blinked slowly. A pair of floating jellyfish-like creatures pulsed with soft light. We need to show them we understand their ways. We need to be part of the conversation. I understand the lesson, Sumin replied. She seemed completely unaffected by his anger. Do you? Ji-hwan took a step closer. Do you understand why the doctrine is so important? It's because we are beyond the need for violence. We have evolved. Li Jun moved forward, putting a hand on Ji-hwan's arm. Ji-hwan, maybe this isn't the place. Ji-hwan shook him off. He was too angry now. He felt like Sumin was a stone in his shoe, a constant small annoyance that was ruining everything. He needed to prove his point. He needed to show her and everyone watching what it meant to be civilized. He reached into a fold of his tunic. The university clothes were simple, but they had pockets. You want to see what we've left behind? He said, his voice tight. You want to see the primitive instinct we have overcome? His hand came out. In it, he held a knife. It was not a tool or a kitchen utensil. It was a combat knife. It was an old design from Earth, made of polished steel. The blade was long and sharp. It caught the light of the corridor and gleamed. It was a thing from another time, a thing of simple, direct danger. The effect on the other students was instant. Gasps echoed. The six-legged students skittered backward several steps. The jellyfish-like creatures dimmed their light and floated higher towards the ceiling, a sign of fear. Whispers of alarm spread through the crowd. Li Jun felt his heart freeze. Ji-hwan, no! He whispered, horrified. What have you done? Park Ji-hwan held the knife up for everyone to see. He wasn't threatening her with it. He was using it as a prop, a symbol. This, he declared, his voice ringing in the suddenly quiet corridor. This is the old way. This is the violence we have moved beyond. This is what true civilization leaves behind. He looked at Su-min expecting to see shock or fear or finally some kind of reaction. But Choi Su-min did not look shocked. She did not look afraid. She looked at the knife in his hand and then she smiled. The corridor fell into a deep silence. The only sound was the quiet hum of the station's life support systems. All the alien students were frozen, their eyes fixed on the piece of polished metal in Park Ji-hwan's hand. It was a shape they all recognized from their species' own ancient histories. A blade, a tool made for one purpose, to cut, to stab, to kill. Lee Jun felt a cold dread wash over him. He could only stare at his friend, at the stupid, proud look on his face. Ji-hwan truly believed he was making a grand point about human progress. He didn't see the fear in the large, dark eyes of the six-legged student. He didn't understand that the two floating jellyfish had dimmed their lights because they were terrified. "Ji-hwan," Lee Jun whispered, his voice tight. "Put it away, now." But Ji-hwan was too far gone. He saw the audience. He felt the attention. This was his moment to prove how civilized he was, by showing off the very thing that was the opposite of civilization. Magistrate Kwanak stepped out of the classroom. His hard, chitinous body made a sharp clicking sound on the floor. His forearms were held stiffly at his sides. The usual calm, stone-like quality of his voice was gone, replaced by a hard, cold anger. "Student Park." The words cut through the silence like a slap. "You have brought a prohibited weapon onto the academic floor. You have displayed it in a threatening manner. You have violated the highest law of this institution." Kwanak took a step forward. He was much larger than Ji-hwan. "Your academic career is finished. You will be expelled. You will be on the next transport back to your world. This is an utter disgrace." Ji-hwan's confident expression finally cracked. The color drained from his face. He had thought he was making a clever argument. He hadn't thought about the rules, the real-world consequences. He looked from Kwanak's furious face to the shocked faces of the other students. His hand holding the knife began to tremble slightly. "Magistrate, I wasn't threatening anyone," he stammered. "I was just making a point. I was showing them how far we've come." "The point has been made," Kwanak boomed. "And it is that you are unfit to be here. Security has been alerted. They are on their way." It was then that a new sound was heard. It was a soft, almost silent sound. A small breath of air, a chuckle. Every eye in the corridor turned away from Ji-hwan and Kwanak. They turned to the source of the sound. Choi Su-min was still standing where she had been when Ji-hwan confronted her. She had not moved back. She had not flinched when the knife was drawn. She was looking directly at the blade in Ji-hwan's shaking hand, and she was smiling. It was not a big smile. It was small and calm, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile a master craftsperson might have when looking at a child's clumsy attempt to build something. It was a smile of deep, profound understanding, and it was terrifying. Lee Jun felt a shiver go down his spine. He had never seen Su-min smile before. This was not a smile of happiness or amusement. This was something else entirely. The air in the corridor seemed to change. A moment before, the atmosphere had been tense with rule-breaking and anger. Now it became something else. It became heavy. Dangerous. Su-min had not moved a muscle, but her simple, quiet smile had shifted the balance of everything. She was no longer just the quiet girl from the back of the class. The casual, relaxed way she held herself was gone. It was replaced by a feeling of potential, like a spring coiled tight, ready to be released. She was completely still, yet she seemed more alive and more present than anyone else. She took one single, smooth step forward. There was no hesitation in her movement. It was fluid and precise. Ji-hwan, seeing her move toward him, took an involuntary step backward. The fear in his eyes was now real. It was not fear of expulsion. It was a more basic, instinctual fear. Su-min's eyes were locked on the knife. Her smile did not fade. "Your knife," she said. Her voice was still quiet, but in the dead silence of the corridor, every word was clear and sharp. "It is a symbol. A story you tell yourself." She took another step. Ji-hwan stepped back again, his back nearly touching the wall. "You drew it to make a point," she continued, her tone almost conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. "You think this makes you look civilized. You think showing it proves you don't need it." She was now only a few feet from him. The alien students were holding their breath. Magistrate Kwanak watched, his own anger forgotten for a moment, replaced by a deep confusion. He did not understand what was happening. "But on my world," Su-min said, and her voice gained a subtle, hard edge, A weapon is never drawn for a point. It is never drawn for a speech. It is drawn for a purpose. She looked from the knife directly into Ji-hwan's eyes. Her own eyes were dark and calm, but in their depths Li Jun saw something he had never seen before. He saw the reflection of a world where survival was not a game. He saw a world of sharp teeth and constant danger. The drawing of the weapon, Sumin said softly, is the end of the conversation. Then, she moved. It was not a movement anyone could properly follow. It was too fast. It was not a punch or a kick. She did not try to take the knife from him. Her right hand flashed out, not toward Ji-hwan but toward the smooth, silver wall of the corridor next to her. Her fingers tapped twice on a nearly invisible environmental control panel. A loud, blaring alarm instantly shattered the silence. The station's artificial intelligence voice spoke, calm and clear but very loud. Warning. Gravitic anomaly detected. Localized gravity field spiking to 4.7 standard G. The effect was immediate and brutal. It was as if an invisible giant hand slammed down onto everyone in the corridor. Park Ji-hwan cried out as he was crushed to the floor. The knife clattered from his hand and skittered away. Li Jun grunted, his knees buckling, and he fell hard onto his side, the air forced from his lungs. All around them, the alien students were flattened. The six-legged student let out a screech as its legs splayed out, its body pressed against the cold floor. The two jellyfish-like creatures dropped like stones, their gelatinous bodies squashing against the ground with soft, wet sounds. A tall, slender alien with long limbs whimpered as it was folded in half under the immense, crushing weight. The entire scene was one of instant, groaning collapse. Bodies were pinned. The sound of strained breathing and pained moans filled the air. Everyone, that is, except for Choi Soo-min. She remained standing perfectly upright in the center of the corridor. She turned her head, looking at the scene of devastation around her. Her movements were smooth and normal, as if the gravity was exactly as it should be. She took a calm, easy step over toward Li Jun, who was struggling to even lift his head. She knelt down beside him. The movement was effortless. She placed a hand on his back. "Breathe from your diaphragm," she said, her voice still calm. "Short breaths. Do not try to sit up." She then stood and walked over to the six-legged student. Its large eyes were wide with panic. She gently adjusted its limbs, which were bent at awkward angles under the pressure. "Spread your weight evenly," she instructed softly. "You will be able to breathe better." Finally, she walked over to where Park Ji-hwan lay, his face pressed against the cold floor, his body trembling with the strain. The shiny combat knife was on the floor just inches from his outstretched hand. He could not even lift a finger to reach for it. Soo-min bent down and picked up the knife. She held it in her hand, looking at it for a moment. Then she looked down at Ji-hwan. "You see?" she said, and now her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear, even over the groans and the blaring alarm. "You think the weapon is the knife." She held the knife up. Then she gestured with her other hand at the room, at the walls, at the ceiling, at the control panel she had tapped. "You are wrong," she said. "The weapon is the mind that knows how to turn a room, an atmosphere, a gravity generator, into a tool." She looked at Magistrate Kwanak, who was on his knees, his forearms straining to keep his heavy body from being completely flattened. His face, as much as it could show expression, was a mask of shock and disbelief. "Your civilization," Soo-min explained, "learned to build safe environments. You learned to control the galaxy outside. You built ships to protect you from the void. You built domes to protect you from the weather. You learned to make the universe soft." She paused, letting her words sink in. "On Earth," she continued, "the environment is always trying to kill you. The gravity is strong. The air can poison you. The animals, the plants, the very water, all of it can be deadly. We could not build a safe environment big enough for our whole world, so we did not learn to build safe environments. We learned to become the environment. We learned to survive inside the danger. We learned to use it." With that, she turned and walked back to the control panel. She reached out, her movement still perfectly controlled under the heavy gravity, and tapped it once. The crushing weight vanished instantly. The alarm stopped. The return to normal gravity was almost as shocking as the increase. Li Jun gasped, sucking in a deep, grateful breath. All around, the students slowly, painfully began to stir, pushing themselves up from the floor. They looked at each other with dazed, terrified eyes. Then all their eyes turned to Choi Soo-min. She was standing calmly, holding the knife. She walked over to Magistrate Quanak, who was slowly getting back to his feet, his limbs clicking unsteadily. She held the knife out to him, offering the handle. He stared at her. He stared at the knife. He did not take it. Su-min placed the knife gently on the floor at his feet. "The doctrine of civilized power is correct," she said, her voice returning to its normal, soft tone. "But you define power as external things. Ships, money, politics." She looked around at all the students, at Li Jun, at the trembling Ji-hwan, and finally back at Quanak. Humanity's power has always been internal. It is the will to survive. It is the adaptability to turn anything into an advantage. It is the understanding that the greatest victory is the one won without a single blow being struck. She had not hit anyone. She had not drawn a weapon. She had not broken the rule against violence, but she had ended the conflict. She had ended Ji-hwan's arrogance. And in that moment, she had ended the galaxy's comfortable understanding of what it meant to be primitive and what it meant to be civilized. Choi Su-min turned and began to walk away down the corridor. No one tried to stop her. No one said a word. They just watched her go, the ghost of her small, dangerous smile still hanging in the air, changing everything. The silence in the corridor was thick and heavy. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the silence that comes after a great storm. The alien students slowly picked themselves up from the floor. Their bodies ached from the sudden crush of gravity. Their minds were reeling from what they had just seen. Choi Su-min walked away. Her footsteps were quiet on the smooth floor. She did not look back. She turned a corner and was gone. The students were left alone with Magistrate Quanak and the two human boys. Park Ji-hwan was still on the floor, but now it was from shame and shock, not gravity. He stared at the spot where Su-min had been standing. His face was pale. His hand, the one that had held the knife, was trembling. Li Jun was the first to move. He went over to Ji-hwan and put a hand on his shoulder. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. Ji-hwan did not answer. He just shook his head slowly. Magistrate Quanak finally moved. He bent his long, jointed legs and picked up the knife from the floor. He held it carefully between two of his fingers, as if it were a dead insect. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at the students around him. They were all watching him, waiting for him to speak, waiting for him to explain what had just happened. He could not. "All of you," Quanak said, his deep voice sounding strained. "Return to your quarters now. There will be no more classes today." No one argued. The students began to move away, helping each other. They walked slowly, their movements stiff and careful. They whispered to each other in their own languages. Their eyes were wide. They kept looking back down the empty corridor where Su-min had disappeared. Li Jun helped Ji-hwan to his feet. Ji-hwan leaned on him, his legs still weak. Together, they walked toward the human living section. Quanak watched them go, the knife still in his hand. Then he turned and walked quickly in the opposite direction, toward the station's command center. He needed to report this, but he did not know what to report. The news spread through the station faster than any official announcement. It moved through the quiet whispers in the dining hall. It moved through the private messages on the communication networks. It moved through the fearful looks exchanged in the common rooms. By the evening, everyone on the Galactic Accord University station knew what had happened. They knew that Park Ji-hwan had drawn a knife, and they knew that Choi Su-min had not fought him. She had simply smiled and changed the gravity. In his small plain room, Li Jun sat on his bed. He stared at the blank wall. He could not stop thinking about Su-min's face. Her calm smile, the easy, precise way she had moved under the heavy gravity. She had not been showing off. She had been teaching. He thought about the word they used for Earth, Deathworld. He had always thought it was an exaggeration, a scary name for a planet that was just a little more wild than others. Now, for the first time, he understood what it really meant. It was not about having big animals or bad weather. It was about a way of thinking, a way of seeing the whole universe as a place where you had to be smart to survive, where anything, even the air you breathe and the floor you stand on, could be used as a tool, or a weapon. In the room next door, Park Ji-hwan lay on his bed in the dark. He felt a shame so deep it was like a physical pain. He had wanted to show how civilized he was. He had wanted to represent humanity, and he had done the most uncivilized thing possible. He had drawn a weapon, and then she had shown him what a weapon really was. He had felt so heavy, so helpless, pressed against the floor. He could not move. He could barely breathe. And she had walked around as if nothing was wrong. She had helped the others. She had looked at him with those calm, knowing eyes. She had not said, "I told you so." She had not needed to. Her actions had said everything. He had brought a knife to a fight, and she had brought the entire station. Magistrate Quannak stood in the office of the station director. The director was a being from a water world. She had smooth gray skin and large dark eyes. Her name was Ilara. Quannak placed the knife on her desk. "I have submitted my report on the incident," Quannak said. "The human Park Ji-hwan is confined to his quarters. He will be expelled." Ilara looked at the knife. She did not touch it. "And the other one?" "The female, Choi Soo-min." Quannak was silent for a moment. "She broke no rules," he said finally. "There is no rule against using an environmental control panel. She did not touch anyone. She did not threaten anyone. She ended the situation by demonstrating that she can incapacitate everyone in a corridor with 2 taps of her finger," Ilara said softly. "Yes," Quannak said. "She said we define power as external things, ships, money. She said humanity's power is internal. The will to survive, the ability to adapt." Ilara leaned back in her chair. "She is not wrong, Magistrate, but her demonstration has caused a panic. The students are terrified. They are not afraid of the boy with the knife. They are afraid of the girl who smiled." The next morning, the atmosphere in the station was different. When Lee Jun went to the dining hall for breakfast, the conversation stopped when he walked in. People moved away from him. He was a human. He was one of them. He saw Soo-min sitting alone at a small table in the corner. She was eating a bowl of oatmeal. She looked exactly the same as she always did. Calm, quiet. No one was sitting near her. There was an empty space around her table, as if she were surrounded by an invisible wall. Lee Jun took a deep breath. Then he walked across the room. He did not look at the other students. He walked directly to Soo-min's table and sat down across from her. She looked up at him. Her expression did not change. "Good morning," Lee Jun said. "Good morning," she replied. They ate in silence for a minute. Lee Jun's heart was beating fast. He did not know what to say. Finally he spoke. "What you did yesterday. You saved Ji-hwan from making a bigger mistake." Soo-min took a sip of water. "I did not do it for him," she said. "Then why?" Lee Jun asked. She looked at him. Her eyes were very direct. "They think we are primitive because our history has violence. They think we are dangerous because we come from a dangerous world." I showed them that they are correct. But not in the way they thought. Lee Jun understood. She had not tried to prove that humans were gentle and civilized. She had shown them that human civilization was built on a different kind of strength, a strength that was far more formidable than they had imagined. The first class of the day was advanced xenobiology. When Lee Jun and Soo-min walked in together, the room went quiet. The teacher, a small bird-like creature, began the lesson in a nervous, chirping voice. During the lesson, a large reptilian student dropped his data pad. It clattered on the floor and slid toward Soo-min's feet. Everyone froze. The reptile student stared, his forked tongue flicking out in anxiety. Soo-min bent down, picked up the data pad, and handed it back to him. "Here you are," she said. The student took it with trembling hands. Thank you," he stammered. It was a simple, polite action, but the whole room had watched it like a dangerous performance. They were not seeing a person being helpful. They were seeing a predator choosing not to bite. The fear was everywhere. It was in the way people flinched when a human walked by too quickly. It was in the way they avoided meeting Soo-min's eyes. It was in the whispered name they had for her now. They did not call her Choi Soo-min. They called her the gravity ghost. Lee Jun felt the change. He was an outsider now. He and Ji-hwan and Soo-min were no longer just new students. They were a problem. They were a question that the galaxy did not know how to answer. He went to see Ji-hwan in his room later that day. Ji-hwan was sitting in the dark again. "The expulsion is official," Ji-hwan said, his voice flat. "A ship is coming in 2 days to take me away." "I'm sorry," Lee Jun said. Ji-hwan shook his head. "Don't be. I was a fool. I thought being civilized meant being weak. I thought it meant following their rules so they would like us." He looked at Lee Jun, his eyes full of a new, grim understanding. "She showed them that we make our own rules." She showed them that we are not weak, and now they are more afraid of us than ever. Li Jun nodded. Yes, they are. What happens now? Ji Huan asked. I don't know, Li Jun said, but nothing will ever be the same. Back in her own room, Choi Soo-min stood by the large window looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast and beautiful. It was also cold and empty. She had spent her whole life on a world that was crowded with life, both beautiful and deadly. This silent metal station felt strange to her. She thought about the fear in the other students' eyes. It was not the result she had wanted, but it was a result she could use. Fear was a tool. It could make people stupid and dangerous, or it could make them careful and respectful. She had not wanted to frighten them, but she would not apologize for what she was. She was a child of Earth, a daughter of a world that taught its children to be smart, to be strong, to be ready for anything. She had ended a fight without throwing a punch. She had made her point without giving a speech. She had shown them the difference between a tool and a weapon. And she had shown them that for a human, the mind was the greatest weapon of all. The galaxy had thought it was inviting 3 curious newcomers into its home. It had not realized it was inviting the environment of a death world inside, and the environment had just smiled. The station felt like a different place. For 2 days, a tense quiet had settled over the corridors and common rooms. The usual chatter between different species was gone. Now students moved in quick, quiet groups, their conversations hushed. They watched the humans with a new, careful attention. It was not the curiosity of before. It was the watchfulness of small animals who know a predator is near. Park Ji-hwan spent his last days confined to his room. He was allowed to pack his things. A security drone, not a living officer, brought him his meals. He was too ashamed to ask about Li Jun or Soo-min. He just stared at the wall, replaying his mistake over and over in his mind. Li Jun tried to continue his routine. He went to his classes. He went to the library. But he was alone. No one would partner with him for group projects. In the dining hall, he ate by himself. The invisible wall that surrounded Soo-min now seemed to surround him too. He was a human, and that was enough. He saw Soo-min sometimes. She moved through the station with the same calm quiet as before, but now her path was like a ship moving through ice. Everyone moved out of her way. They gave her a wide berth. She did not seem to notice, or if she did not care. On the morning of the 3rd day, a small transport ship docked with the station. It was time for Ji-hwan to leave. Li Jun went to the departure bay to see him off. He was the only one there. Ji-hwan walked into the bay, followed by a silent security drone. He looked pale and tired. He carried a single bag. Jun, he said, his voice rough. I came to say goodbye, Li Jun said. Ji-hwan nodded. He looked at the floor. Tell Soo-min I understand now. A little anyway. I will, Li Jun said. Ji-hwan looked up, his eyes serious. They're not going to let this go, Jun. The galaxy. They saw something they can't control. They're scared. When people are scared, they do stupid things. Be careful. Before Li Jun could answer, a voice came over the speaker. Departing passenger Park Ji-hwan, please board. Ji-hwan gave a final grim nod. Then he turned and walked up the ramp into the ship. The door closed behind him with a solid final sound. Li Jun was left alone in the empty bay. He felt a heavy weight in his chest. He had lost his friend, and he had no idea what was going to happen next. Later that afternoon, a formal message arrived for all students. It was from Station Director Ilara. There would be a mandatory assembly in the main lecture hall. The subject was galactic cohesion and community standards. When Li Jun entered the large hall, it was already full. He found a seat near the back. He saw Soo-min sitting a few rows ahead, alone as always. The room was silent. No one was talking. Director Ilara and Magistrate Kwanak stood on the stage. Ilara's large dark eyes scanned the crowd. She looked tired. Students, she began, her voice calm but firm. The recent incident has been a shock to our community. It has challenged our understanding of safety and protocol. We are here to reaffirm our shared commitment to the Galactic Accord and its principles. She spoke for a long time about rules and respect, about the importance of nonviolence, about how the station was a place for learning and peace. It was the same speech they had all heard on their first day. But now it felt different. It felt weak. Then Magistrate Kwanak stepped forward. His hard body was rigid. The individual responsible for brandishing a weapon has been removed, he stated. The matter is closed. We will now return to our normal schedule. Any further disruptions will be dealt with severely. He was trying to put everything back in its box, to pretend that the world was still the same as before. But everyone in the room knew it was not. They could all feel it. The old rules did not seem to apply anymore. After the assembly, the students filed out quietly. Lee Jun waited for Sumin near the door. "What did you think?" he asked her. She looked at him. "They are afraid. They are trying to use old words to describe a new thing. It will not work." As they walked down the corridor, a group of students blocked their way. They were the large, reptilian students from a world called Sith. Their leader was a particularly big one named Versk. He had been in the corridor when Sumin changed the gravity. Versk stepped forward, his scales rustling. He looked at Sumin, his slitted eyes narrowed. "You," he hissed. "You think you are strong? You think your tricks make you better than us?" Lee Jun felt a knot form in his stomach. "Let us pass, Versk. There is no problem here." Versk ignored him. He kept his eyes on Sumin. "You humiliated us. You pressed us into the floor like insects. My people do not forget an insult." Sumin looked at him. Her face was calm. "It was not an insult. It was a lesson." "A lesson in what?" Versk sneered. "In how to cheat? In how to be a coward?" Sumin did not answer. She just watched him. Versk took a step closer. He was much bigger than her. His tail swished back and forth. "I challenge you," he said, his voice a low rumble. "A real challenge. Not with your machines, with strength. My strength against yours." The other Zith students hissed in agreement. A small crowd was gathering, watching from a safe distance. Lee Jun's mind raced. This was exactly what Ji-Hwan had warned him about. Fear leading to stupid actions. Versk challenges are forbidden. "You heard the director." Versk laughed, a harsh grating sound. "Your rules are for weaklings. My people have rules of honor. She must answer for the dishonor." All eyes were on Sumin. What would she do? Would she fight him? Would she use the gravity again? Sumin looked at Versk. She looked at his large, powerful body. She looked at his sharp teeth and his strong claws. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. It was the same small, calm smile from before. "Your strength is impressive," she said, her voice quiet. "You are very strong. On your world, that is enough to be the leader, is it not?" Versk puffed out his chest. "Yes, the strongest leads." "So your strength is your authority," Sumin said. "It is your power. You rely on it completely." Versk nodded, confused by her agreement. Sumin pointed a finger not at Versk, but at the ceiling above his head. "What if your strength was gone?" Versk looked up. There was nothing there but a light panel and a ventilation duct. Sumin's finger moved slightly, pointing at the ventilation duct. "The air you are breathing right now," she said. "It is a mix of gases made to suit many species. It has more oxygen than your home world. It helps you feel strong and alert." She paused, letting him understand. "I know the station's systems. I have studied them. I know the command to change the air mixture in this corridor, to reduce the oxygen, to add a harmless heavy gas that would make your lungs feel like stone. Your great strength would be useless. You would grow weak and dizzy. You would fall to your knees, gasping for air, and I would still be standing here breathing normally, because my body is adapted to many different environments." She lowered her hand. Her smile was gone. Her eyes were serious. "That is the lesson," she said. "Your power is one thing. My power is to understand all things. You challenge my strength, but I do not need to be strong. I only need to be smarter than you." Versk stared at her. His confidence was gone. He looked from her calm face to the ventilation duct. He imagined the air turning thick and heavy in his lungs. He imagined his mighty muscles failing him. He took a step back. The other Zeeth students also moved back. The fight had gone out of them. Sumin looked at the crowd of watching students. "The galaxy is big," she said. "It has many rules. But the oldest rule, the one from my world, is this. Understand your environment or it will kill you. I have chosen to understand this environment." She looked back at Versk. "Have you?" Versk did not answer. He lowered his head, turned, and walked away. His followers went with him. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispering. Lee Jun let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. She had done it again. Without a single punch, without touching a control panel, she had won. She had used only words and knowledge. As they walked back to their rooms, Lee Jun looked at her. "You wouldn't really have changed the air, would you?" Sumin glanced at him. "It does not matter." He believed I would. He believed I could. That is the only thing that matters. They walked in silence for a moment. Jihuan said to tell you that he understands now. Li Jun said. A little anyway. Sumin nodded. Good. What happens now? Li Jun asked again. They will keep testing us. Yes, Sumin said. They will. But they will be more careful now. They will think twice. That is a start. She was right. The fear was still there. But it was changing. It was no longer just the fear of a dangerous animal. It was becoming the fear of something far more unsettling. It was the fear of an idea they could not defeat. The idea that for a human, especially one from a death world, the mind was the sharpest weapon of all, and that weapon was always drawn. A week passed. The station did not return to normal. There was no more laughter in the common rooms. The easy friendships between different species were gone. The air was thick with a silent, watchful tension. Everyone was waiting. They were waiting for the next thing to happen. They were waiting for the humans to do something else. But Choi Soo-min did nothing. She went to her classes. She ate her meals. She studied in the library. She was a model student. She followed every rule. She was quiet and polite. And her every movement was watched by dozens of fearful eyes. Li Jun felt the pressure building. He was a ghost in his own life. He was completely alone. One afternoon, he found a data slate on his bed. There was no note. When he turned it on, it showed a single document. It was a petition. It was signed by over half the student body. The title was, For the Safety of All, a request for the removal of Deathworld contingents. They wanted him and Sumin gone. His heart felt like a stone. He threw the data slate on the floor. This was not a challenge of strength like with Versk. This was politics. This was a quiet, civilized way of pushing them out. He had no idea how to fight it. He went to find Su-min. He found her in the botany lab, carefully pollinating a strange purple flower from a low-gravity world. She looked completely at peace. He showed her the petition on his own device. They want to expel us, he said, his voice tight with anger and fear. They're scared and they want us to leave. Su-min finished her work with the flower. She wiped her hands on a cloth. She looked at the petition. She was not surprised. They are using their system, she said. It is the civilized way. What do we do? Li Jun asked. We can't fight this. If we complain, we look aggressive. If we do nothing, we get sent home. Su-min looked at him. For the first time, he saw a flicker of something like pity in her eyes. You are thinking like them, Li Jun. You are thinking about fighting their game. Do not play a game you cannot win. Then what do we do? He asked again, feeling desperate. We change the game, she said. The next day, Choi Soo-min did something she had never done before. She requested a formal meeting with Station Director Alara and the entire student council. Her request was public. Everyone on the station saw it. The rumor spread instantly. What was the gravity ghost going to do? The meeting was held in the main lecture hall. It was packed. Every student was there. Li Jun sat in the front row, his hands clenched into fists. He had no idea what Su-min was planning. Director Alara and the student council sat on the stage. The council was made up of one student from each of the major species. Versk was there, representing the Zith. He looked nervous. Su-min walked onto the stage. She stood alone in the center under the bright lights. She looked small. She looked at the hundreds of faces in the audience. They were all afraid of her. She took a small, quiet breath. Director Alara, members of the student council. Students, she began. Her voice was soft, but the room was so quiet everyone could hear. I am here because of a petition that asks for me and Li Jun to be sent away. It says we are a danger to the community. She paused. No one moved. The petition is correct, she said. A wave of shock went through the room. Li Jun stared at her. What was she doing? We are a danger, Su-min continued, but not for the reason you think. You think we are dangerous because we are violent, but we have not been violent. You think we are dangerous because of what we might do, but the real danger is what we represent. She looked at Director Alara. The Galactic Accord is built on a beautiful idea, that many kinds of people can live together in peace, but this peace is fragile. It is a peace that depends on everyone being the same. It depends on everyone following the same rules. It is a peace that cannot handle difference. She turned to the audience. You are afraid of me because I am different. My world is different. My mind is different. I do not think the way you do. And that frightens you more than any knife or any trick with gravity. She walked to the edge of the stage. You want to send us away to make the fear go away. But it will not work. The universe is big. It is full of difference. There are other death worlds. There are other ways of thinking. You cannot send them all away. If you cannot learn to live with us, then your great galactic accord will fail. It will shatter the first time it meets something it does not understand. She pointed at Li Jun. He is not dangerous. He is kind. He is smart. He wants to be your friend, but you will not let him. Because you are afraid. Then she pointed at herself. I am dangerous. I admit it. My world taught me to be dangerous to survive. But I am also logical. I understand cause and effect. I understand that peace is better than war. I understand that cooperation is better than conflict. My danger is controlled by my reason. Can you all say the same? She looked at Versk. Your people value strength. If you feel disrespected, your first thought is to fight. Is that not a danger? She looked at a small furry student from a low-gravity world. Your people are quick to panic. In a crisis, you might spread fear and confusion. Is that not a danger? She looked back at the whole audience. Every one of you is dangerous in your own way. Your instincts, your biology, your history, they all make you dangerous. The only thing that makes us civilized is that we choose not to be. We choose to use our minds to overcome our instincts. She walked back to the center of the stage. Her voice became softer but more powerful. You wanted a demonstration of human power? You have been looking at it wrong. Our power is not in fighting. Our power is in enduring. My ancestors did not conquer Earth by being the strongest animals. They conquered it by being the smartest. They learned to use fire, to build tools, to work together. They endured ice ages and droughts and plagues. They endured a world that was constantly trying to kill them. She looked out at the silent, watching faces. That is the power we bring to the galaxy. Not the power to break things. The power to endure. The power to adapt. The power to understand any environment and survive in it. That is the power you are so afraid of, and that is the power that could save you all one day. She finished speaking. The hall was utterly silent. No one clapped. No one booed. They were all thinking. Her words were sinking in. Director Alara stood up. She looked at Suman. She looked at the students. She did not know what to say. It was Versk who broke the silence. The large reptile stood up. He looked at Sumin. Then he looked at the other council members. She's right, he said, his rough voice loud in the quiet. My people are dangerous. We know this. We have rules to control it. He turned to the audience. To send them away is cowardice. It does not make us safe. It makes us weak. If we are so fragile that two humans can break our community, then our community was already broken. One by one, the other council members nodded. The furry student stood up. We are all different, it squeaked. That is the point of this university. Li Jun watched, his heart swelling with a new feeling. It was not victory. It was something deeper. It was hope. The petition was forgotten. It was never mentioned again. Sumin stepped down from the stage. The students did not crowd around her. They still kept their distance. But the fear in their eyes was gone. It was replaced by something else. Something thoughtful. Something respectful. She had not fought them. She had not threatened them. She had given a speech. She had used only words, and with those words, she had done the most powerful thing of all. She had not just ended a conflict. She had not just ended their fear. She had ended their old idea of what it meant to be strong. She had ended their simple story about good and bad, safe and dangerous. She had given them a new story. A story about endurance, a story about adaptation, a story about a species that was raised by a harsh world to be smart and tough and unbreakable. Choi Su-min walked out of the lecture hall. Li Jun followed her. They walked down the corridor together. This time no one moved out of their way. They just watched them pass. The invisible wall was gone. They had not been accepted, not yet. But they had been understood, and for now that was enough.